Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Healthy Actions Intervening Responsibly. You already know, known as HAIR. I am Jacqueline, the founder, and I am your host. Thank you so much for being with us today. I am so appreciative to have a little piece of your time. I hope you are well, I hope you are safe, and I hope that things are getting better for you. Today, we have, a continuation of our topic on addressing adultification of children. Today we're going to specifically talk about implicit biases. Now, what I'm going to share today, some of the contents that I addressed during my trainings. So I thought I would bring more of some of the training contents to you. Perhaps you would like to schedule a training for your school, your congregation, your community, your family. Yes, I've had several family members to schedule me to come and have this very conversation with their family so that they can be on the same page and have a safe place to discuss adultification, which is where children are put in adult roles and taking on adult responsibilities. So families felt that they could have this conversation together from someone who is outside, someone who can bring information and share the impact, the effects of what adultification does to children, and that they would not feel that any particular family member is trying to take up all the time and is trying to share their own situation based on their own opinion and perspective. So I am available for families as well. So I want to go ahead and dive right on in. So from the start, the moment a child is born, in so many cases, some children from the very start are not provided with tools and resources for a successful life. Isn't that unfortunate? And isn't that disheartening and unfair? Many children are pulled off track. Many children are pulled off track from life experiences. Isn't that disheartening, unfair, and yes, I'm going to say shocking? I challenge myself to never get to the place that I'm no longer sensitive. So whereas I'm shocked, I'm not shocked. But I don't want to become of the mindset that this is the norm, this is normal, this is just the way it is. And I hope that there are other adults out there like me that, saying to yourself, I will not allow myself to be desensitized. I will not allow myself to begin to think of or to continue thinking that this is just the way it is and that this is just so normal. Because in my opinion, I feel that when we begin to feel that way or think that way, then it's easy to just dismiss doing anything about it. It's easy to dismiss the thought. Oh, it is so easy to just let it go and be like, well, it ain't my problem anyway. So I challenge myself to stay engaged, to stay present, and to remain as a living, breathing resource for our children and the families. So, what influences case decisions when it comes to the child welfare system, when it comes to the criminal justice system? Certainly race, risk, and income were found to influence case decisions. a family living in poverty was known to have a direct impact on the outcome of the case of that family. And we know that families who are living in poverty are capable of caring for their children, taking care of their children, loving their children, despite the questions about their ability to care for, take care of, and love their children. And we do know that parents who might have a lot of risks in their lives, who are vulnerable, have a lot of barriers put in their way, are just as capable of taking care of their children, providing for their children in terms of love, knowing what those children need, knowing what those children like, just as much as parents who have resources and who have access. Not all families, not all parents have access to the resources that we're told are available for children. Certainly, where a family lives can be a determining factor of what type of access they will have to resources and to services. When it comes to implicit biases, implicit, which means it is a set of associations we have about a group of people that we aren't aware of. So, being a black woman, I hear almost on a daily basis comments that are made about how black people are, what black people do, what black people are like, how black people act, the decisions that black people make, the things that black people won't do to help themselves. And those comments are made about black people in general. And those are some of the comments that I hear on a daily basis. So when it comes to disproportionality, who we see showing up at alarming rates, disproportion rates in the child welfare system, in the criminal justice system, is children of color, and particularly black children. There are disproportionate and disparate needs of children and families of color due to higher rates of poverty, racial bias, discrimination exhibited by caseworkers, mandated reporters, and reporting agencies. So whereas a program, a teacher, a pastor, a youth leader might refer a family to a governmental agency, well, the person might be thinking that, yeah, they'll get help here. But what we know and has been well documented, that when a family of color is referred to a governmental agency, in so many cases that family is more likely to be put under surveillance and monitored by that governmental agency. And now here comes the microscope. Here comes really honing in on that family and watching every single move they make, or monitoring decisions that they make, and looking at those decisions, weighing it out based on it being a good decision, a wise decision, the right decision. Where then that family Their cultural beliefs, the way they function, then becomes questioned, which removes their dignity and removes their pride. Implicit biases. Students are having educational opportunities disrupted for simply being themselves and for embracing their culture. Once again, where their culture and their beliefs are being questioned or judged as not good at all, not good enough, not necessary, not important, and not even worthy of even me learning about your culture, learning about your belief system, learning about what it means to be you. How many times have individuals been silenced or penalized or criminalized based on how they define themselves, how they see themselves? I know as a black woman, very, very often we are criminalized and penalized for expressing our blackness, for being proud of who we are, for being assertive. So very often it is perceived as being aggressive and resisting. And certainly with those comes huge consequences, harsh consequences, and immediate consequences. And that's even the case for our children. One example that I like to give about when someone is being themselves, when it comes to hair. When it comes to hair, there's so many rules across our nation. There has been statutes put in place, legislation put in place directly, specifically about black people's hair. Something we are born with that grows out of our scalp has to be protected by legislation. Like, just being black is so political. And we can't freely be ourselves, define ourselves for ourselves without there being some consequence. There was a young man that I learned about, and I found this is very common across the nation. So this is not one single story, but it's so many all over. And that's just what stereotypes are. A single narrative about a whole nation of people or nations of people. I was surprised, which means I knew a lot of this existed because of my own experience, but I did not realize how prevalent it was. A high school student who was on the wrestling team was told before participating in the wrestling match, he had to cut his locks. They had to be a certain length before he could participate in the wrestling match. There's so many examples that I've learned about, and that ties directly into policy even within the schools. What I learned reading the article was that the school principal brought up the issue of policy and said that it says right here in the policy, it says this, and we aren't going to change it. The only option is to leave our school because our rules and our policy isn't going to change. There are lots of policies in place when it comes to black hair, hairstyles, and hair textures. Certainly, there's some biases that causes that. And many individuals are not willing to take a look at their own biases, to learn their own biases for the good and the benefit of the students they say they care about. The students who are there to gain and get an education. We are finding so many interruptions in children's school experiences, in their leadership opportunities. How is that? Leadership opportunities, what do you mean? Well, we also know it is well documented. When teachers see students as intelligent, brilliant, sharp, that certainly can influence whether a teacher refers or recommends a student for a mentorship opportunity, a leadership opportunity, and certainly if that teacher sees a student as unintelligent, incapable, lazy, well, he's smart, but it just doesn't show up in the classroom, one of those microaggressions, that can certainly have an impact on a student being referred, whether a student is referred to a mentoring program or leadership opportunities as well. Implicit biases has been one of the reasons that black preschoolers have been suspended or removed from the school entirely. How they see that student, how they see the parents, and even how many students and their parents are totally written off. They aren't worth working with, worth exploring, worth engaging, where all of the responsibility, if there's going to be any change in that child's life, is going to fall on the shoulders of the parent. Rather than schools revisiting their practices, their styles, their ways of engaging students and engaging their families. So then it becomes, well, the student isn't good for this school, isn't good for this class, it's something wrong with them, it's something wrong with the parent isn't interested, the parent is lazy, and so we can easily once again dismiss our role, or the role we can play, and our responsibility for being more creative and engaging that student and parent in very different ways. Here's the other thing. When it comes to disabilities, learning disabilities, it is very often that students of color are not provided the assistance and support they need when it comes to the disabilities they might have. Some have physical disabilities, mental disabilities, learning disabilities, and those tend to be dismissed or written off entirely because someone is not taking the time and seeing that student as valuable, as worthy, as intelligent, as skillful, to engage them in the educational system. And we know that the resources when it comes to education and disabilities are vastly different based on the community, the area, the family, class. It can look very different depending on where you go and who that child is. If that child has an advocate. So that is a huge determining factor. Environmental and social concerns. Certainly biases is getting in the way. Implicit biases, our own biases is getting in the way and causing harm for so many children, their education and their future. Societal perceptions about children of color, particularly African American males, are known to directly influence the judgments of professionals in their interactions with them. A lot of times, professionals come expecting a fight when it comes to black men. Many teachers in the classroom have talked about the child they keep their eyes on, they feel needs the most attention all the time is a black boy. Biases can lead to harsher disciplines in school, inequitable enforcement of dress codes, and immediate corrections when a student makes a mistake. Or there are times where black children might show up in the community at a program or services for families, and how that professional, the person that's there to work with the community, their body expression, their body language, their facial expressions. Oh my goodness, you're here again, what you do now. And I've seen that so many times in the school. What are you doing in this office for now? You were here yesterday. Are we going to have a problem today? And I can go on and on and on with examples. And it seems that we don't even give a thought to how that makes that child feel. We don't give a thought to how it sends that child home from an environment which is arranged and set up for learning. Well, let's go with that. The environment that is arranged. A lot of times we arrange things, we plan things without including youth voices. We think we know what is best for them. We think we know what works for them. We think we know what is going to help. And a lot of times it's the complete opposite. And when we learn or maybe hear from them that really that doesn't work too well, we take it personal. We get upset. We decide to withdraw our resources. We decide to withdraw our help. We decide that, okay, you're on your own. Hey, I tried helping you, but since you're not going to listen, then I'm done. I'm through. Well, here's another thing about biases. There was a young lady who was very outspoken and very well known throughout the school to be outspoken. One day during class, she raised her hand to ask questions about the lesson. The teacher, rather than hearing her question as sincere and honest, she responded to the student that she was distracting the class and trying to get attention, rather than that she was sincerely and honestly asking a question to get an understanding about what was just shared with her. Unfortunately, that is very, very common with black girls, that they are seen to be a distraction and an interrupter, rather than sincerely engaging in their classrooms. So, with all of this being said, what can be done? What can we do? For those of you out there who's thinking about this, who wants to take this to another level, who wants to do some action steps, who want to do something in your community, here are essentials for making a plan. Check your own biases. We all have them. Check them out. Check what they are. And then take some time to think about how your biases are harming others. How your biases is actually a harm to others. Be non-judgmental when you're working with families, engaging with youth. Don't come with it already in your head, the conclusions you've already made in your head, the things you've already heard about them from someone else, what someone else says. This is just how children are. This is just what boys do. Get rid of all of that and decide to be non-judgmental. Number 3, get to know their family and how that family functions. A lot of people think that parents don't care. They're just into their own thing. They're just way too busy. They just let them get away with murder. They let them do whatever they want to do. They're always with their cousins. They're always spending time over here, and seeing that as if that parent is neglectful. So get to know the family and how they function. Have conversations about their inner strength and what keeps them strong in the times of stress. Ask them what works for them. Ask them if they've tried this and tried that. Don't have conversations and bring things up as if they've never tried it. Adapt forms to be more flexible and open for use. If your organization is working with families and you have intake forms, review those intake forms. Find the biases or the judgment in those forms. The checkbox system may not work for every family. So at times when the checkbox system isn't working, we tend to look at that family as deficient, or we might look at that family as unresourceful, that they don't fit in our box and in our system, then it's something wrong with them. You might need to have forms that are more open-ended, forms with more open-ended questions, more strength-based sections on our forms as well. And not that, again, the checkbox system has already pretty much determined how they function and figure their lives out, because there's only a limited amount of selections on those forms as well. Observe and assess for signs of family distress. Like a time like now, it is clear that families are having a lot of stress, challenges, in need of encouragement, in need of support, might have repeated situations and incidents that you might feel, we just talked about this, didn't we just talk about this? Didn't we just do this? Didn't we just work on this? Which then goes back into maybe judgmental, and that we want to avoid. Also, link parents with resources for responding to stress. What can that family do together to reduce their stress, to eliminate stress? What does planning mean for that family? Not that we're deciding for them, but that they are deciding for themselves. And we can certainly and should certainly respect their autonomy. As I always say, at the end of every show, we have so much work to do. Our work is cut out for us. We cannot afford to start tomorrow. We need to start today. We can make small baby steps at bringing forth an effective change on behalf of our children and the next generation. I thank you again for joining me and being with me today. For example of trainings and workshops, feel free to visit my website, www.healthyactionsinterveningresponsibly.com. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope that you are well and that you are safe. Thank you.